Survival horror is one of those acquired tastes that you get to appreciate better once its mechanics click with you. The bigger idea of the genre is not about eliminating all the enemies and hazards, but rather utilizing the tools at your disposal to make sure you reach your goal with minimal damage. Because of how limited your resources are, however, you have to use them wisely. Every bullet, every healing item, every inventory space has to count to make sure you stay alive in the face of danger. Resident Evil is the series that popularized this. While you usually play as a well-trained police officer, the hazards you face are far stronger than mere criminals, leaving you with an adventure equal parts terrifying and exciting. And Resident Evil 2 is one of those games that manages to bring the genre to its full potential, ramping up the horror and expanding on the ideas introduced in its original release. For the second time in the franchise, you follow two protagonists, Leon Kennedy, a rookie police officer on his way to Raccoon City for his first day at the force, and Claire Redfield, a young woman going to the same city in order to find her brother Chris, who seems to have gone missing after the events of the first game. We follow their respective stories as both find themselves stranded in the zombie-infested city, having to find a way out before they get eaten, or worse, get infected. While the game has in essence two campaigns, we will focus first on the gameplay side. As I said at the beginning, this game is survival horror at its finest. You start out with just a handgun and a single ammo clip. Anything else you have to scavenge as you make your journey through the police station, and that is the core of the experience really. Any objectives you need in order to make it to the next part you find organically. You find out about important items or puzzle solutions in documents scattered around, and you can simply find most of your objectives by exploring. One major improvement about this is that the game's map will mark things you find for you. For example, if you try to go through locked doors that require specific keys, or you have a major puzzle in a room, the game will give you specifics of what is needed to succeed, or which puzzle you found, so you get to remember to come back with the required items later on. Sometimes, in order to get to an important item, you have to go out of your way to examine the items you find, and that in return gives you secondary puzzles, or simply reveal the actual item you are going to need. It's very intuitive, and it applies for every single item in the game. Even the non-puzzle ones will update their descriptions so you get a better idea of what you have and what it does. I know this sounds extremely simple at first glance, but you are not going to be able to just hoard everything in one go. You have a limited inventory, so if it becomes completely full, you cannot pick up anything else. This means you have to leave items behind in the storage box, or you have to consume one item in order to open up space. So you have to manage exactly what you want to have, how many healing items, weapons, ammo, keys, and how much free space you want so you can pick up new supplies or key items before you have to take another trip to the item box. This is brilliant because it adds a layer of strategy to how you explore the area. You find yourself subconsciously planning out routes and even calculating at what point your inventory will fill or empty. But as they say, some things are easier said than done. This is a horror game, so roaming the halls and rooms of the game, you get zombies and other mutants hampering your progress. And these are not regular zombies. They can take quite a bit of punishment before they seemingly go down, and sometimes they will fake being dead, so when you make your way through their territory, they can actually ambush you. This is where the game yet again expands on the ideas of the genre. Rather than simply gunning them all down, you have to strategize and use what I want to call the death space method. Zombies are very resistant to bullets, but their limbs can only take so much. You can shoot a zombie limbs until they get severed from their bodies, and this renders most zombies into relatively harmless cripples. This opens up the area for you to keep exploring peacefully before you have to worry about taking more damage, and if there is a single zombie, you can finish them off with some well-placed headshots, or pull a Resident Evil 4 and knife them while they are down. But you need to make sure every shot counts, and there is only enough ammo to kill a handful of zombies, so the other strategy is to kite them around areas you are sure you won't be visiting again, because true to its atmospheric setting, the outbreak is happening in real time. The more time you spend in one area, the more zombies are going to swarm the station, making navigation difficult until you open up doors and discover shortcuts. That's another thing I enjoy. As I was playing through the police station, I thought everything looked pretty well connected, like a Metroidvania. But then, as I keep advancing, I got my mind blown when I discovered that, with the exception of the labs, every area of this game is interconnected. I'm not going to say how exactly or show you to avoid spoilers, but you will love it when you see it. Now, with everything said and done, you will think you're gonna end the game with plenty of ammo, except the strategizing I was talking about is mostly because you want you to save your ammo for the more dangerous enemies. Once you reach a certain point in either A or B scenario, you will be greeted with Mr. X, and he turns the police station into a terrifying game of cat and mouse. They took the concept of Nemesis from Resident Evil 3 and they ramped up the tension to 11. Rather than getting a chance to permanently defeat Mr. X until his next encounter, he is virtually immortal. You can go out of your way to try and nail him with some well-placed headshots, but that will only buy you enough time to get away from him and keep looking for your objective, and even that can only get you so far, especially if you happen to be in a room full of zombies. Mr. X is amazing because he throws a wrench into your own player strategies. Remember how you can start avoiding certain parts of the police stations as zombies start swarming in? You may end up running into that danger if you want to avoid him. And in your fear of taking damage from him, you can even end up running straight into a licker, and I love that kind of stuff. This means that you have to move and think fast on how to replan your strategy as you move along, and it's not entirely bad or overwhelming. Once the intensity of encountering him wears down, you begin to notice that there are nuances to him. Mr. X is always accompanied with a tense chase music track. This is your cue that he is onto you. If you hear the music fade, it means he lost track and he's now patrolling. So long as you're not making too much noise, you can spend most of your time avoiding him. But if you run, slam doors open, or shoot at zombies, then expect the music to pick up again. That is yet another layer of strategy. You find yourself pre-planning your next move just as you might have no choice but to open fire to the enemies and then start getting away before he homes in on you. The best part is, the game has even more nuances to make sure you don't get overwhelmed with Mr. X harming your progress. There are 3 particular rooms that he will never patrol into, so if you feel cornered, you can go into these rooms and you can wait for him to patrol away, giving you an opening to go to the next place. So for a game whose first third takes place in a single building, the level of depth to the gameplay is just fantastic. To spice things up a little bit more, once you get out of the police station, you get to play as 2 different characters. With Leon, you get to play as Ada for a short while, and with Claire, you get a spooky stealth section with Sherry in the orphanage. In the former, you go through a little obstacle course with hacking and avoiding zombies while you have very limited ammo. In the latter, it is a very tense little stealth sequence where you have to think fast as you have neither weapons or healing items, and getting cuffed once at all means you get a complete game over. They are short enough and nice enough that you feel well refreshed once you regain control of Leon and Claire, so you can start then dealing with the bosses. I love the bosses in this game. I saw reviews and player reactions claiming they didn't like them, but coming into this game as a longtime fan of Resident Evil, I couldn't help but find myself perplexed. Let's take William Birkin as a good example of this. The man can come off as bullet spongy when you find him at first, but no matter which phase you are fighting him as, he always has one distinct aspect. He has a big glowing mutant eye somewhere on his body. Maybe times have changed. Maybe having so many AAA games released with no real boss fights has disoriented players. But for me, I couldn't help but find obvious that if an enemy has a big glowy spot, it means you can shoot that spot for massive damage, to the point even my handgun alone proved to be enough to do the job. So dealing damage is more about accuracy rather than just damage output. Adding to this, pretty much every enemy in the game telegraphs their attacks, so a player with a more keen eye will know when it's time to shoot and when it's time to dodge or run away. I don't know, maybe I'm getting older, but a lot of the stuff in this game felt pretty obvious to me, and I went in 100% blind. I had no idea what will happen or what to expect. And having no idea what to expect is what the B scenario of the campaign has. The B scenario is where you get to play as the character who gets inside the police station after whoever you use for the A scenario. And since you're starting after the helicopter crash, it means the police station is already swarming with zombies. There is also a slight increase in difficulty. Ammo and key items have been flipped around, puzzles have changed, and there is even less ammo available, so you want to think twice about which enemies you want to gun down, and if you will come to regret not having those bullets for later enemies. Things get so tense that running into ammo at all let me sigh in relief, resources becoming precious as gold, and feeling a heavy sense of dread when new enemies caught me off guard and I had nothing to defend myself with. Even knives and flashbangs can mark the difference between having one more chance and simply dying. The best part in all of this is that the game has an overwhelming amount of replayability. I know to this day a number of players will rather embrace and treasure their first and only playthrough, but I disagree with that sentiment. Coming back to this game for a second, third, and even a fourth playthrough can be just as amazing as the first time you played, because you start optimizing your runs and you start to learn puzzle solutions that will save you time looking for said solutions. And you will then know when to pick up ammo and when to skip certain pickups so you take even less trips to the item box. Just to give you an idea of how good this is, my first time beating the game as Leon took me 8 hours and a half. Claire's B scenario took me 6 hours. By my third playthrough with Claire in the A scenario, I beat the game in less than 3.5 hours. Yes, in order to beat the game as fast as possible, you have to know exactly where everything is and when to use your ammo. More importantly, you have to know when to save, as you are only allowed 3 chances to save before you lose your chance for an S rank. It was just as tense and adrenaline pumping as when you're carefully walking the halls of the police station for the first time, and I love it. But you know what I love even more? Extra content. You are not going to find this in launch reviews, but after some time they expanded the content with so much good stuff to play, it really amazed me. Once you beat both A and B scenarios, you unlock the Force Survivor minigame. You get to play as Hong, fighting your way out of the sewers and into the police station in order to reach the extraction point. You get no pickups on the way, and you only get what is in your inventory to defend yourself. And the game is relentless with the enemies, throwing everything at you in order to prevent you from reaching that chopper. After finishing that, you unlock the Tofu Survivor, which is the same deal except you play as a tofu and got nothing but knives to defend yourself with, and even beating this mod will unlock even more tofu characters. And lastly, there is also the Ghost Survivor stories, little what-if scenarios where you play as certain characters looking to make their own escape out of Raccoon City. And this game mode made me think a lot of the original Mercenaries mode in the original Resident Evil 3, complete with its own in-game reward system, unique infected, and different degrees of challenge. And just like the Force Survivor, you only get one chance at beating each scenario, so if you die, you have to start over. This is even equipped with its own training mode and normal mode, so you can hone your skills and figure out what you have to do before you take on the real challenge. It's a nice twist, and some of the scenarios are so good, part of me even wanted them to be canonical. And beating those modes gives you a horde mode, where you get to play as a single cop having to defeat 100 enemies before rescue arrives in a very cramped gas station. It's just as intense and hard as you can imagine, and I had the time of my life playing it. It goes without saying, but Resident Evil 2 is a masterpiece. The gameplay hits all the right spots, everything you do is gameplay focused, and while the story can be silly at times, it's grounded well enough that the more emotional moments hit you good. You get a more somber look at the zombie apocalypse that destroyed Raccoon City and how this affected everyone involved. The game feels, ironically enough, pretty alive, and the atmosphere of being stuck in a city overrun with zombies is just perfect. This is why I am more than happy to give Resident Evil 2 a well-deserved and very perfect 10 out of 10. I know there might be disagreements to it, but it is my subjective opinion that the game is subjectively perfect. There was no dull moment for me, and even right now I want to keep playing so I can unlock everything else I've been missing. It is also a nice reminder that your enjoyment of a game doesn't simply end after your first playthrough. I know I sound like a broken record, but replayability will forever be a far more important aspect for me in a game, rather than how long or how short the main campaign is. Because when you start replaying your games, you begin to notice the handsome devil in the details, and just how many clever ways of completing your game there really are.